Korea over the Allies' negotiations. South Korea posts a current account surplus for the fifth straight month in September. Sounds good, but on closer inspection, less so. The amount is down more than 30% on year. Plus, following words with action, China reveals plans to tighten its grip on Hong Kong after months of pro-democracy protests have rocked the city to its core. Our top story this morning, US Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, David Stilwell, is in Seoul for a whole bunch of meetings as a joint military intel sharing pact between South Korea and Japan is set to lapse within weeks now. First, he sat down with South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa this morning. That will be followed by meetings with officials from the Presidential Office and the Defense Ministry. Upon his arrival last night, Stilwell said he hopes to have productive talks and reaffirm the strong alliance that he called the cornerstone of regional security. Attention is focused on the message he will deliver regarding Seoul's decision to pull out of GSOMIA, the intel sharing pact with Tokyo. Citing security issues, Stilwell is expected to urge South Korea to retract its decision. Economic cooperation talks between South Korea and the US. They've been held in Seoul this morning. Seoul's second Vice Foreign Minister Lee Tae-ho sat down with Keith Krach, who is an Undersecretary on Economic Affairs from the US State Department. They are believed to have discussed ways to bolster economic ties, South Korea's new southern policy, as well as cooperation with Indo-Pacific countries. The two sides are expected to sign a joint statement based on those talks as well. The meeting is the fourth of its kind since the first was held in 2015. The top US negotiator in defense cost-sharing talks with South Korea is in Seoul as we speak. Local officials say it appears to have come to gauge public sentiment here in South Korea over the Allies' negotiations on their cost-sharing for the US troop presence on the peninsula. The two sides are still quite a ways apart. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
James DeHart, the Senior Advisor for Security Negotiations and Agreements Bureau of Political Military Affairs, and the top U.S. negotiator in defense cost-sharing talks with South Korea, arrived in Seoul on Tuesday.
Very good to be here this week. Thank you.
Watchers say his visit through Friday may be aimed at gauging public sentiment over the two countries' cost-sharing negotiations. DeHart is expected to have an unofficial dinner meeting with representatives from Seoul's foreign ministry, including his counterpart Chung Eun-bo, and meet South Korean lawmakers as well as journalists. The visit comes as DeHart and Chung failed to narrow the gap in their defense cost-sharing talks in Hawaii last month. Under the 10th Special Measures Agreement struck in February, Seoul agreed to pay $870 million this year, but reports say the Trump administration wants $5 billion for 2020, a figure that's considered far too high by South Korea.
It's true that the U.S. side is asking for much more than they did in the past.
While South Korea and the U.S. will meet in Seoul later this month for further negotiations, observers say it's unlikely DeHart will engage in any form of negotiations during this particular trip. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's current account posted a surplus for the fifth straight month in September, but on year the figure tumbled over 30%. The Bank of Korea says the current account surplus in September was $7.5 billion. That's actually the highest figure in 11 months, but compared to the same period last year, it's down 32%. The central bank attributed that drop to lower prices for key exports, including chips and petrochemical goods. South Korea's services account recorded a deficit of $2.5 billion. South Korea's Land Ministry will unveil the districts where the price ceiling system will be applied. That's going to happen in around an hour from now. The government and the ruling party first discussed the price ceiling system on privately owned housing sites back in August. So, as a follow-up, the ministry will announce specific districts where those rules will be newly applied. The districts subject to the system will be from the 31 areas designated as speculation-prone zones, 25 of which are right here in Seoul. Now, sales of Japanese cars here in South Korea have slumped for 4 straight months now amid a nationwide boycott in response to Tokyo's trade curbs. However, much better news for South Korea's biggest automaker. Hyundai Motor actually smashed pre-purchase records in South Korea with its newly launched Grandeur model. Our Chair Jung-yoon has this report.
It's been 4 months since the No Japan boycott movement sparked in Korea, prompting Japanese brands to incur huge losses. In particular, Japanese car makers have lost a significant share in Korea's market, paving the way for other foreign brands. While the total number of imported car sales in the country rose 6.2% on-year last month, sales of Japanese vehicles plunged 58% to roughly 1,900 vehicles from 4,700 during the same period. The Korea's Automobile Importers and Distributors Association, with its recent data, confirmed that the number of Japanese cars has been plummeting continuously since Koreans started boycotting in July, setting the total number of purchases sold this year far to a 13.1% fall on year. In contrast, German car makers Mercedes-Benz sold the most number of imported cars in Korea, with more than 8,000 models this month alone, a 26% increase on year. Korea's own automakers have also felt the aftermath of the boycott. Hyundai Motors, for instance, set a new record on Monday with the release of the new Grandeur, which has now set the record of being the most sold car on a single day. 최정윤, Arirang News.
The number of self-employed workers in South Korea has dipped, slightly anyway, compared to last year. However, among the economically inactive population, those that do not wish to work at all hit a record high. Hong-yu has this report.
The self-employed population for the month of August was 6.79 million, a drop of 0.9% compared to the same period last year. The number of self-employed workers in wholesale and retail fell by 55,000. And personal service and telecommunication businesses saw a drop of 30,000. By age, the number of self-employed people in their 40s fell by more than 130,000 on the back of a sluggish performance by the manufacturing and wholesale and retail sectors. The number of self-employed people in their 50s also saw a large drop due to the closure of self-employed businesses. Statistics Korea says that the economic downturn has dampened consumer sentiment, which has led to the closure of self-employed businesses that were already struggling. The proportion of self-employed people who employ workers dropped by 7% on year. The economically inactive population, which includes homemakers, students, and those who can't or won't work, grew by 1% from last year to more than 16 million. And the number of those who are taking a break from working hit a record high of 2.1 million. The agency says this is due to a change of people's perspective about not working, with people giving themselves time for self-development to prepare for the next step in their lives. Hong-yu, Arirang News.
After months of increasingly violent protests in Hong Kong, China has finally decided to make its move, strengthening its control over the Chinese-ruled city. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Dami. So, Dami, just walk us through this announcement from Beijing that's sure to have people in Hong Kong rather unnerved.
Right, Mark. China has invoked and will enforce its grip over Hong Kong. China's state-run China news agency reported Tuesday that Chinese government made the decision at the 4th plenary session of the 19th Communist Party of China Central Committee held in Beijing last month. China makes it clear that Hong Kong will always be part of China under its one country, two systems. No challenge that threatens that, particularly in Hong Kong and Macau, will be accepted by China. Beijing added new systems that supplement basic laws and constitutions in the districts will be introduced, as well as legal adjustments to enable autonomy centered on patriotism. In addition, the district chief executives will be fully responsible and obedient to the Chinese government. Appointment and dismissal systems and structures of special administrative officers, including chief executives, will also be revised and perfected. The Chinese Communist Party then stressed that Beijing will exercise full control over these special administrative zones in accordance with the Constitution and Basic Law in order to boost patriotism in Hong Kong and Macau and to prevent intervention, division, and destruction due to foreign forces. At least 3 women and 6 children, all U.S. citizens, have been murdered by drug cartel gunmen in northern Mexico. The tragedy happened on Monday when members of the LeBaron family, dual Mexican and American citizens, were ambushed while traveling in 3 separate SUVs in the Mexican border state of Sonora. Mexico's Security Secretary said the gunmen may have mistaken the group's large vehicles for those of rival gangs. Police say they're attempting to track down the killers. The U.S. and China are reportedly considering withdrawing some tariffs for their highly anticipated Phase 1 trade deal. The Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday that a senior Trump administration official says removing tariffs will be, quote, part of it if they reach a deal. The report added Washington and Beijing agreed in principle last month to end the trade conflict. The Phase 1 trade deal includes China's purchase of American agricultural goods and rules to deter currency manipulation. It also contains methods to protect U.S. intellectual property in exchange for freezing tariff increases on hundreds of billions of dollars on Chinese goods.
South Korean striker Son Heung-min will no longer have to serve a 3-game ban in the English Premier League after the red card he received for a tackle last weekend that gravely injured an Everton player was overturned. Tuesday's decision by the Football Association comes as Tottenham's claim of wrongful dismissal was upheld by the FA's Independent Regulatory Commission. The referee initially gave Son a yellow before deciding he should get a straight red instead. Son is currently with his team in Belgrade for their Champions League match against Red Star. Park Hangseo, the South Korean manager for the Vietnamese national football team, has signed a bumper contract extension to remain with the team for the next 3 years. According to Park's agency on Tuesday, the South Korean manager was given the largest contract in the history of Vietnamese football. The exact figures, however, haven't been revealed. Park's current deal was to expire in January. His extended stay will be made official at a press conference on Thursday. Now, South Korea's IT giants have been revealing their visions for the future to build a base for innovation in the decades to come. The firms are pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into AI and 5G technology. Oh Soo-young with the details.
From self-driving cars that pick you up at the door to hologram phone calls and robot baristas, South Korean tech giants are placing their bets on artificial intelligence and 5G. Samsung Electronics on Tuesday said the 5G mobile network and AI will lead the company into the future, becoming the backbone of smartphones, wearables, speakers, IoT and other smart technologies. It pledged to conduct state-of-the-art research in its 7 global AI centers across 5 countries. Samsung currently holds the 3rd largest number of AI patents behind Microsoft and IBM, according to IPlytics. Local telecom firms, which launched the first 5G network in the world for mobile users in April, are also at the heart of developing AI solutions to make life smarter, faster and more convenient. KT Corporation announced its plans to invest $258 million over the next 4 years to become an AI company and nurture 1,000 professionals in the field. SK Telecom and platform giant Kakao also made a bold turn towards AI, striking up a swap share deal worth $257 million to strengthen cooperation in developing related technology and content. Working with small and medium-sized businesses and researchers in the country, these IT giants are aiming to help turn the country into an AI powerhouse, as Korea is still considered around 2 years behind the US and China when it comes to AI-related research and development. The government said Tuesday that it will strengthen policies and restructure the science ministry to create an enabling environment. Focusing on what it calls DNA, data network and AI, the ministry will dedicate a new bureau to policies on AI, big data and nurturing digital professionals, separate from the ICT Bureau. It will also create a bureau for network security and make other structural changes to encourage regulatory reform and innovation. The government has earmarked $1.4 billion in next year's budget for data network and AI, an increase of 50% from this year. 오수영 Arirang News.
One of the three co-winners of this year's Nobel Prize in Medicine is here in South Korea for a short stay to spread his wisdom to some inquisitive minds. Meeting with researchers at the Institute of Basic Science on Tuesday, William Kaelin highlighted the importance of finding what to work on or deciding, quote, where to fish. Kan Hyung-woo files this report from Ulsan.
The 2019 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was jointly awarded to three scientists last month for their findings on how human cells react to oxygen levels changing. One of the three co-winners, William Kaelin, came to South Korea to share his discovery on defining the molecular pathway that cells use to sense whether they're getting enough oxygen, information cells use to adapt.
We also know that certain cancers rely on this pathway, and so we also have new drugs being developed that basically prevent cancer cells from using this pathway for their own evil purposes.
Kaelin also had a word of advice for young scientists during his visit to Ulsan National Institute of Science and Technology on Tuesday.
When I was a young boy, my father liked to fish, and I learned that one of the most important decisions a fisherman makes is where to fish. And likewise, when you are a scientist, one of the most important decisions you make is what to work on.
Kaelin later in the day held a meeting with researchers at the Center for Genomic Integrity of Korea's Institute for Basic Science for potential joint studies in the future. Here at the Center for Genomic Integrity, researchers are trying to find out more about how the molecular mechanisms of DNA replication, repair, and recombination work and discover answers to the origins of aging, cancer, and evolution. The Nobel Prize winner said both his lab in the US and Korea's Center for Genomic Integrity can learn from each other's research because they share the same goal of improving human lives by curing diseases. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News, Ulsan.
Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information useful for your everyday life. And if you're watching us in Korea or have been here before, there's a good chance you've tried kimchi. Well, it turns out that the best time to make the spicy side dish this year is coming 2 to 4 days later than last year. Korea's weather agency advises people in Seoul to make kimchi on December 3rd, followed by Daejeon on December 5th, Daegu on the 8th, and Busan all the way next year, January 4th. This follows relatively mild temperatures in late November as kimjang, the process of making and preparing kimchi, is best when daily lows actually remain below freezing. Otherwise, kimchi ferments too quickly, whereas cabbage and white radish freeze when it's too cold, of course. Experts say the best date for kimjang is now almost 2 weeks behind what it was in the 1920s. Local researchers have found a new anti-cancer compound that kills lung tumour cells without hurting normal cells. According to the Korea Institute of Science and Technology on Tuesday, the compound deactivates an enzyme called PDHK, which prevents cancer cells from growing. It was found to have this effect even when used by itself, but even more so when used with other cancer drugs. The research team expects that it can also be used to treat other diseases exacerbated by PDHK, such as diabetes. Now, in this modern world, smartphones have become glued to our sides, and we take elevators every day. So some of you, including myself, may have wondered just how clean or dirty those touch screens or elevator buttons actually are. Now, if you are a germaphobe, you might want to listen out carefully because a group of Korean researchers has some rather bad news for you. Park Se-young with more.
Elevator buttons are pressed by people all the time, and people spend their days glued to their smartphones. This is why a local research team investigated the cleanliness of around 40 smartphones, 140 elevator buttons, and some 30 ATMs. The study found pathogens which can cause serious infections in humans on the surface of every device.
Comparing the surface of a toilet lid with that of an elevator button, the study found that the elevator button had as many microbes as the toilet lid.
Smartphones hosted more types of microorganisms, while elevator buttons were home to the highest number of microorganisms per square centimeter. In case of elevator buttons, the hygiene of frequently used buttons like the first floor and door control buttons were far worse. With smartphones, more germs were found in the sweaty months of August and September. Exposure to these germs is unlikely to affect adults with a normal immune system, but children and the elderly should be more careful. And researchers advise refraining from touching the eyes, nose, and mouth after using contact-type devices. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Good morning. The big chill is on its way. It's going to feel like winter on a Friday morning at a low of just 1 degree Celsius here in the capital. But it's not surprising as Friday is Ipdong, the beginning of winter according to traditional calendar. In fact, mountainous regions and inland regions will be even colder, and Yangju in Gyeonggi-do province will see lows plunging to -5 degrees. And despite the chilly temperatures today, some upper regions are seeing high levels of fine dust. And those of you in Chungcheongbuk-do province could see polluted air all day today, so be sure to have a face mask handy. Temperatures on this Wednesday will be a touch cooler than yesterday under bright skies. Southern provinces will enjoy clean air with highs in the 20s this afternoon. Easterly winds will bring mix of snow and showers to the East Coast tomorrow. Then central regions will see rain on Sunday afternoon, which could linger into Monday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. Plenty more coming up, including our next newscast at noon Korea time in around an hour and a half from now with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
'19 Overseas TV Audience Survey.